So this kind of thing goes on in so many different ways, but where's it coming from? Agenda 21, Sustainable Development. This is a conspiracy. Go read their own documents. They've written about it. Agenda 21, Sustainable Development, is also about doing away with your Second Amendment rights. It's about welfare on demand. It's about the right to migrate wherever you want, whenever you want. And to do that, we just simply need to know who you are. So Agenda 2030 openly calls for everybody to have a real ID card. Yep. And it's got biometrics on it. So the little card, like your driver's license, though, will now have an RFID chip or some kind of chip on it that contains a lot of information. But the legislation written in America shortly after 9/11 occurred allows the Department of Homeland Security to change at any given moment what those cards can be required of. In other words, they're saying, well, you won't be able to get on an airplane without one coming up real soon. And again, this kept being pushed off and pushed off and pushed off, even during the George W. Bush administration, because the states did not want to have to implement it and pay for it. And the federal government was going to make them pay for all the implementation at the state level. And that's called an unfunded liability. They didn't want that. So the Secretary of States, and some of the governors kept really fighting this hard, saying, we don't have the money for this. This is an unfunded mandate on us. We're not doing it. But more of them are now getting pressure to do it. And many of them have already started to give it out. California, other places are already giving out the real ID. And so eventually the federal government's going to put its foot down and say, you cannot get on an airplane without one. And eventually without one, you won't be able to travel. May we see your papers, please? I mean, this is where we're headed. But what is going to be on this card? Well, it can contain a lot of information, your medical records, your medical history, all kinds of information about you. We don't know what ultimately it will contain. But what bothers me is that, for instance, in China, I wrote about this in some of my books years ago in the early 90s. In China, everyone has opened on them what's called a dangan. And a dangan is a file opened on you when you enter school, and it follows you through life. And your hiring, firing, job promotions, and ability to travel is based on a review of an applicant's dangan. Now, the problem with that is we have in our school system, as I've been writing about since the mid-90s, what's called school to work, and gauging the political evaluations of young people. And are these political evaluations going to go on your card? Will a government person, state, local, federal, be able to scan your card, the police, and know who you are, what you believe, what you do for a job, what your political evaluations are? That's very scary. Sounds like something Hitler would have loved to have had to be able to identify who was with him, who is against him, who's a Jew, who is not going to cooperate politically. You know, it all fits together. In fact, here is something I wrote about in some of my books years ago, where I found at the time six states that were offering career assessment for students, for the government, through the federal government and state governments, to help children, young people, pick the career they would go into, which I think that should be left up to the free market system and them and their parents. But the government wanted to say, hey, we're going to funnel people into what jobs they should be doing. And again, this also comes from the United Nations and various states, including America, were doing it and are. And here's what I found in 6 states, and this was several years ago, but it's growing. I want to know what this has to do with picking a kid's career major. Here's what I found in 6 states, this test. I have taught a Sunday school class or otherwise take part in my active in my church. I believe in God who answers prayers. I pray to God about my problems. I read the Bible or other religious writings regularly. I believe that God created man in his own image. I ask God for forgiveness of my sins. If I ask God for forgiveness of my sins, are my sins forgiven? These are questions that were on this survey I found in 6 states several years ago, part of a career assessment test. And what I was warning then is, what does that have to do with a kid picking a career path? Maybe the kid says, I want to be a journalist. I want to be a talk show host. I want to be a pastor. I want to go into the ministry. Well, maybe the idea is, no, you aren't, because you don't have the proper worldview. So we've already seen from the federal government through our educational system and a global UN plan dreamed up by Robert Mueller and followed by the United Nations and America through America 2000, Goals 2000, Common Core, Race to the Top, No Child Left Behind, whatever you want to call it. It's changed names from Republican to Democrat, but the same thing. We've already seen the United Nations rolling out legislation that countries adopt that are tracking personal information. Why? So they can then put everyone in their proper place. As Aldous Huxley in Brave New World said, round pegs don't fit in square holes and tend to have dangerous thoughts about the social system and infect others with that discontent. So if we start to collect data on people at a very early age, as they do in China, on a Dangan, and it follows them through life, hiring, firing, job promotions, and travel are based on review of an applicant's Dangan. Well, what is going to come onto a smart ID card? Can you guarantee me it's not going to be my political evaluations of myself or that of my children or my family? This is very dangerous.